trying to do here is what Yisrael is trying to do here is to describe the various moves of the give and take in Gemara, the basic language that's used. And again, as we just said in our other class, the point here is to use the style of what's being said to understand the information. In other words, when instead of just passively reading the system of argumentation, let's try to analyze it and see if we can organize it in such a way that we could use it as in our discussions as a conscious tool. Okay, and again, the Chiddush here is called conscious learning, trying to bring what we do through assimilation, but just by natural processes of learning and saying over, bring it more to a conscious level and to an organized level. So here we have a few more examples that he's going to bring, and I couldn't find, this takes a long time to find both simple examples or any examples sometimes, but I did the best I could. So we're going to go through these here. Okay, now, Balav Hachinami. So we're in the end of the Sefer. Maybe we'll go through it a little more quickly, but he says like this: Balav Hachinami. This is another one of the principles of or keywords used in debate. He says, Hu kasher hamadaber masna ezatanai. It's where the person who's speaking sets up a certain condition, b'divarav, in his words, opinion, in what he's saying, or the subject matter he was saying. He says it depends upon a certain condition. And the person who was arguing with him says, no, it's bilti mukhrach. Who bilti mukhrach? You don't need it. So when a person the opponent makes a statement and he adds a certain condition, so the opponent says, wait a minute, that you could have the same law without that condition. So that's the lashon of Balav Hachinam. Even without that condition, we could still have the same result. Okay, so he's saying it's bilti mukhrach, and you get the same result without that condition. V'yeshiv lo Chavero, the opponent says, Balav Hachinami, even without this, we'd have the same law. So now he says, V'yesh le'ayen, im oso tanai hu al tzad hayoter tov, o im masne behechrach haregus. Okay, he says, check out whether this tanai is a preference or has to be there because there's no other alternative. Now, the second part I understand, hechrach means that it's we have no other alternative except to say that this Tanai is here. Okay. Now, the other part, he says it's a Tanai yoter tov, which I don't understand how a Tanai could be there because it's better or it makes things better, but it doesn't have to be there behechrach. It's one of the things you'll have to help me out with. But anyway, I brought an example here of a einachi, balav hachinami. Remember, which is saying that even without that condition, we'd still have the same result. So here's a Gemara in Baba Basra. It says the following: Abu said, "Shalu et Shlomo, Ezu ben Olam Haba." They asked Shlomo, "Who's the Omalahem called those that came up. Kavod, everyone who gives kavod to the Zakenav. Kihod Yosef Reder of Yeshua, Chalash Ingid. This Rabbi Yosef Reder of Yeshua was weak. That's the point we want to get. His father said to him, when he got up from his sickness, Omale Avuha, my chazas. So he went into some sort of fantasy position. Okay, he got very, very sick. So his father said, well, what do you see in that condition? So he said the following: Shamati shayu omrim haruge malchus ein kol brir yocholim lamod b'machitzatam. I heard that they said up there in the heavens that the great rabbis who were killed by the Romans, there's no creation that can be in their section of Olam Haba. So, Maninu, so the Gemara says, who were they? I mean, who are these great tzaddikim that we're talking about that no one has their chelik? So the Gemara says, Ilem Rabbi Akiva Chavaro V'shum Haruge Malchus V'sulo. If you're going to tell me that he's talking about Rabbi Akiva, that's the simple meaning of Haruge Malchus, so this is the only reason why they reached the place where no other human being could reach, because they gave up their lives. It says, Peshita b'lav hachinami. He says, even if they didn't give up their lives, they were so great, Rabbi Akiva and all the Tanaim that died at his time by the hands of the Romans were so great even without giving up their life. They had reached such high, lofty heights of Torah that no one can stand in their place anyway. So, Ella Haruge Lut. So it must be that we're talking about the people that were destroyed, the rabbis destroyed in Lut. Okay, so what are we saying here? Even without this event of giving their lives up for Torah, you'd have the same result of being in a place where no one else could reach. Okay, so that's b'lav hachinami, so that's a kasha. So you can't say that this is talking about Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva, even without giving up his life, would fulfill the sentence of being in a place where no one can else stay. So it has to be talking about something else. So that's b'lav hachinami. Even without that condition, we'd have the same result. Okay, so that's normally given in a case where a person says halacha and is predicated on a certain position, on a certain tanai, and we say, wait a minute, even without the tanai, the halacha will be the same. So your tanai is not necessary. That's b'lav hachinami. Okay, the next one here is heichi mishkachat lo. Where do we find such a case? So that move is done in the following. Who, when the thing that's being said is very difficult to picture. Or its reality is something that's very strange. To such an extent that we'd say, wait a minute, the reality of what you're talking about just can't be. So Omru Lo, the opponent will say, how could you find such a case or such a situation like that? So here's an example from Bava Kama. It says, Shor shenagach es ha'adamu meis. A shore gores a man, and the man dies. So we have two dinim here. If he's a muad, he's Mishalem Kofer, not the shore, but the man who owns the shore. If his shore had killed, this is the third man he killed, so the Baal has to pay Kofer. The Tam is Patam in a Kofer, but it's the first time that he killed a human being, so he doesn't have to pay Kofer. V'zeh v'zeh Chayav Misa, but both of them are Chayav Misa. Both the Tam and the Muad are Chayav Misa. So the Gemara says, wait a minute. V'ki me acher, the Misa Sam, Katlinan lei, Muad hechimishkachle. Look, if the law you just told me was that the minute he kills man number one, you're going to kill the ox, so how could he ever get to a muad? A muad means he did it 3 times. So how could you find such a case? In other words, the reality of having a muad seems to be impossible, because the law is the first time he kills, we kill him, so you never get to that position. Okay, so that's hechimishkachle. Answers, he ran away, we have all these answers. But the question here, the focus here is on the method of debate here. When something is too far out, the Gemara will ask, wait a minute, how can you say such a thing? Where do we find such a thing like that? And forces us to change positions. The next one is Hechidami. Okay, Hechidami. What is it comparable to? Hu kesheomer hamamer hu or Mishnah Satuma. When the statement or the Mishnah is closed, she'ena mabuar be'eza toar or be'eza inyan medubar, and we don't understand what it's really saying. It's a total closed text. So v'yesh lo lishol kusha kenegdo be'eza toar she'eh az yomer hechidami. Since it doesn't make any sense, the text as it is, no matter which way we turn it, so we ask the kasha, how can we find such a case? Okay, so let's see if we have our example here. Baba Kama. So the Baba Kama says the Sada Shabashibahan, Lasuye Mai the Gemara. Baba Kama says there's 4 types of Nazikin, the Shobor Mama Ever, and they have a common quality of Darkei Hatalmud Shmiras and Alecha. So the Gemara wants to know what is this common quality, which case is it coming to add to our 4 Havas Nazikin. So Abaye says, Lasuye Abno Sakino Maso, Shanichan Barosh Gago, V'naflu Baruch Mitsuya V'ziku. So Abaye says, I'll tell you the new case that we have from the Tzad Shava. It's stones, knives, and packages that someone put on the top of the roof, and they got blown off by a common wind, and they hurt somebody. So that's the new case, which is not a short bor mav and hever. So the Gemara says, Hechidami, wait a minute. How could we spell out this case that it makes any sense? If the packages fell off the roof and hit someone while they were flying, so that's Eish. That's not Tzad Shava, that's Eish. Maishna Eish de kol chachem rabo monchas mirsan alecha haninami kol chachem rabo monchas mirsan alecha. This is straight Eish. There's no difference. And Eish is what? Is a mazik that the koach hacher, the wind comes and blows it. And since you have to be aware of that, so you have to pay. So too, these beds, you have to, on the items on the roof, you have to know a common wind is there, and you have to watch it. So that's Eish. There's nothing to do with the common, an LTD between all the avos. Okay, so maybe Ella Basa Denaiche. Maybe we're talking about after they fell off the roof, they landed on the ground, and someone tripped on them. So there we said, wait a minute, if there were Hefker, Ben Larab Ben Lishmuel Hainu Bor. Wait a minute, someone trips over your item, it's called a bor. Maishna bor, that's if it's Hefker. Okay, everyone holds that once it's Hefker, so everyone holds an item that causes them to stumble is called a bor. Maishna bor shechin techilsin nezik u'mon kushmirsan alecha haninami techilsin season nezik u'mon kushmirsan alecha. Okay, so it can't be that case either. It was Hefker. So El de lo Hefker. So we're still caught because according to Shmuel, it says even an item that causes someone to trip that you didn't mafkir, it's still called a bor. That's still called a bor. So we're caught. So the hechidami means that there's no way that we can figure out what this case should be. So we know that the Mishnah said that there's some new din that comes from the Tzad Shava. But when we analyze it, we say, well, if it's like A, it doesn't work. If it's like B, it doesn't work. If like C, it doesn't work. So what case could we possibly be talking about? So that's Hechi Dami. All right. Now, in Tim Salomar, which I don't think should be Tim Salomar, it's Tim Salomar, but I'm going to read how he describes it, okay? What I found in the Gemara was a little different than what he's describing. We'll read what he says. Im Tim Salomar. Hu kasher madaba mesuya devarov al tanai o havdama bilti mibueres. It's when the proponent establishes what he has to say, and he says this thing is true because of a certain condition, or it's true because of a certain premise, but the premise is bilti muvaris. It's not 100% clear. That, in other words, the Tanai or the premise for saying your statement isn't 100% clear. So the opponent, the shoel, he calls him, says, Im tim saloma shazos hagdamakain. Wait a minute. You haven't described let's read what he says. Ajishol, Im tim saloma shazos hagdamakain ma toma bezeh shehu anav mistav mimeno. Wait a minute. If you say that this is the condition or the premise that is the foundation of your argument, so then what are you going to do with this other case that doesn't have that condition? These are all languages. Even if I grant you your premise, it still won't be sufficient. Even if I grant you your position, you won't get that result. Okay, so I saw Intim Salomar used in a lot of ways. I just couldn't find a live example of this one, if you can, without the shop. But what he's saying is, no matter what, even if I grant you your position, Intim Salomar, if you say it's A, then you'll have a problem with this case. If you'll say it's B, you'll have a problem with this case. So no matter what however you describe your situation, you're going to end up with a problem. Okay. Now this we did before, so I'm just going to read it because we did it in another class very extensively. I remember we used this as a parish what I said before. Hachinam mistaber or daikanam. What does that mean? This also makes a lot of sense, or we can also infer that what you're saying is correct. Why? Who or how? This is when a person, the proponent is bringing a proof. From externally or internally. Ulam afal pi sheyiksha kenegdo, even though you're going to ask a prop, you can have kashas on it. Also, excuse me. Ulam afal pi sheyiksha keneged also raya. O shoraya and in kolkach, even though you'll say your raya is not powerful. Al kol zeh hadava atzmo lo nisha levutal ela shitzorech rai mimakom acher. Okay. Al kol zeh hadava ba'atzmo lo nisha levatel ela shitzorech rai mimakom acher. That is very, very unclear. He explained before that you're bringing a proof to what you have to say from a diuk in the language that's being said, okay? Because the proof that you bring is not that strong, so then you appeal to the text and say, look, I'm telling you that that text is correct. Well, I mean, it means what I'm saying because you can also medayik in the language. So the language is also a type of proof, okay? Or if it makes, that's what he says.
So he's saying that way. In other words, it's not going to be mevatel it, but it will need a proof from somewhere else in order to strengthen the idea.
I'll tell you this language very clear. Let's read it again. I tell you the truth, I don't get the language. Hu kasher madaba machrich d'varav makom acher o mitzad atzmo, ulam afal pi shekasher negdo oso raya. O sharaya inenu kol kach al kol zeh hadava ba'atzmo lo nishar levatel el tzarech raya mimakom acher. I don't know what that means. We'll go back next time we meet.
Okay.
We'll go back. We'll do the example that he gave. Okay. Beseda.
Okay.
Okay. Beseda. Have a great.